So hello guys, I hope you guys are all well and having a great week. So tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering are really excited to host our 10th talk in this annual guest lecture series. So this series runs weekly throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings, bringing together a vibrant mix of speakers from across the full spectrum of design and engineering. So we have a mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to inspire and support the professional development in all of our participants. Tonight, we'll be hosting Adam Shaw, founder of The Heart Guide. Adam has a really interesting background and experience. He once worked in banking, then nursing, before leaving the NHS to set up his own business. He then went on to help business owners to position themselves to attract funding and look after their mental health. In last year's guest lecture series, Adam presented a fantastic conversation on business funding and mental health with a talk titled Business Funding and Mental Health, How to Attract Both. That's also available online, so feel free to obviously go back and rewatch that. Adam has also ran pitching for funding events and pitch practice workshops to help people get funded. His relatively recent role at Satoshi Block Dojo was to find the next generation of blockchain business entrepreneurs and partner with them on their journey to help them get funded. So Adam's involved with several other blockchain incubators as well. His experience with Satoshi Block Dojo in the blockchain space has highlighted a need to identify talent, nurture great business ideas, and get them pitch ready for funding. The talk tonight's going to address this journey and identify suggested next steps for those on this path. As usual, guys, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat throughout the talk. And Adam's typical interactions are very interactive as well. So obviously there'll be a dialogue amongst the participants and speaker tonight. We also have question and answers at the end as well. There's also an option to go live and interact, and network at the end of the talk. And Adam's, suggested that he'll be available thereafter as well. So without any further ado, over to Adam with a talk titled How to Get Your Business Funded.
Well, thank you, Ahmed. It's a very kind introduction, and of course, no pressure now to exceed expectations of the last one. So, I was going to tonight actually to get you all to introduce yourselves so that I could get a feel for who's in the group. So, for the first few minutes, I'm going to give the opportunity to you guys. I don't know if there's any way that I can find out who I need to unmute, but really just to introduce yourself and say, who you are and what you're hoping to get out of this talk. Because some of you might be on the funding journey, some of you might have thought about the funding journey, some of you might have an idea and got no idea or just a passing interest in it. So really wanted to really engage with you, find out where you're at and give you something, I hope, that will be useful to you to take forward out of this. So amazing. I don't know. Is there a message board or is there?
Yeah, guys, feel free to populate the chat if you guys want to. Otherwise, if you put a request in the chat to go live, and you can always unmute yourselves and talk to Adam directly.
Absolutely. Well, look, I should leave that on. I won't put you under any pressure. But if any of you want to engage at any stage here, then I'm happy to go down that route. So I'll keep an eye on the chat, and I'll look to. I shall tell you. I'll tell you a story. Here's a story, right? Because my journey was a little bit different to most people's. So my main background professionally was as a nurse. So I spent 13 years working on the frontline healthcare. And I was very, very lucky, not because nurses get paid loads of money or any of that, or even the good karma aspect. I was very lucky to work with people at the end of their lives. So one of the things I had to do quite a lot, and it turned out I was quite good at it, is when people didn't have a lot longer left, I used to do a life review with them and find out what was important for you. And at the time, I was pretty young. I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And I had all of my family saying, you need to get yourself a job, you need to go to university, you need to do all of these other things. And, telling me what I needed, laying out my life before me. And meanwhile, I was seeing other friends. They were just going off traveling. They were going around the world. They were working in summer camps in the US. They were having the times of their lives. And, I just wanted to live my life while I had the opportunity. Because one thing that living in a nursing setting, when you're working in an A&E, you realize you don't know when your time's coming. You really don't. So many people, the mistakes that people make is they plan for this future that never happens. It doesn't exist because you don't know what's going to happen with your health, with your life, with the people that you love around you. Everything's completely impermanent. So a lot of the trauma that I saw in the health service were people expecting things. Or be, oh, better music. Well, we can't argue with that. We'll have a groove, folks. I'm all up for a party. Oh, bring it on, folks. Bring it on. Maybe my drink's not quite strong enough for that one. But this was a thing. I was speaking to people all the time, reviewing their life, what was important to them, and more importantly, the big regrets that people had. And it strikes me.
Wait.
Yeah, that was pretty much the review of a lot of people, quite frankly. I'd say, are you happy with what you know? Are you happy with your life? And it's
why is pushing? What's pushing? Oh wait, no.
I could see this would go. This is going to get interesting today, folks. But do feel free to jump in. More than happy for that to happen. So I used to review people at the end of their life to find out what was important. And really the thing that was missing with most people is some sort of sense of purpose. So before we even talk about funding, we talk about your business, or we talk about why you're at university or any of that. Here's a question I want you all to think about. What is the purpose of your business? You know, supposing it's hugely successful, well, what's that going to give you? What do you want out of life? What are you building towards? What is the goal? And it's incredible that most people never really consider that. It's almost like this drudgery survival of, oh, I must get money. Oh, I must get a job. Oh, I must do that. And for a lot of people, before they know, they're sucked into someone else's dream, doing jobs that they don't really like, for people that they don't really like, for the promise of a happy retirement, which quite often never happens. So it's, you know, a lot of things like that do go on in life. A lot of regrets come from people, and it's because they don't really consider this, or they don't take time out to have fun in their life, to enjoy themselves, to do stuff that they want to do, to really explore the world if that's your thing, or to you know, downtime as well. Because one thing that I can tell you for certain, that the funding journey, and whether it's crypto, blockchain, anything like that, any funding journey is stressful. Because with a job, you've got regular income. You can plan holidays, you can go away, you can do all sorts of things, you can plan in advance. As an entrepreneur, you don't have that luxury. So if you're the CEO and you have a bad month, or COVID happens and you're running an events-based business, you know, things can, it's a little bit like a tsunami for your business coming in, and you're just left to deal with it. So for this reason, understanding what funders are looking for, what businesses are fundable, and how to go out and get funding is really important, certainly for business owners. And my journey took a sideways knock. I was a well-being consultant. My background being nursing, I studied a lot of alternatives. So I worked with energy. I went into Reiki and vortex healing. I did a few, what my friends would call the woo-woo arts. I went quite deep down that rabbit hole, studying alternative things out there that could offer people hope at the end of their lives. So I got quite experimental. And when I left nursing, and it wasn't planned, I sort of jumped before I was pushed, because I was reporting bad practice. Then I ended up in the world of funding, meeting an entrepreneur and running funding events. So that's how a nurse, somebody with a background of a nurse, ends up in funding. It's all about who you meet. And that is the critical element to anything business related. You know, it's the relationships that you build that are always the thing that that make the most difference. So I realized that my people skills from nursing were very transferable to the world of business. So I got to meet quite a few people, especially in the funding world, and then just got to ask questions about what they liked and what they didn't, what got funded and what didn't. So that was my background leading up to last year. Now, last year, because I'd been running a funding business running into the first lockdown, but it was events based. So my business, I was running networking events, funding events, and suddenly I wasn't able to run any of them. So it gave me a bit of a jolt. I didn't like Zoom as a forum to run the regular events that we'd been running physically. People weren't enjoying them as much because they didn't have that human connection. So I took a time out. I mean, luckily, I say luckily, you know, I had the resources to take some time out and just review what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, watching the world go crazy as it seems to have done in the last couple of years. You know, where is it leading? What's happening? And then I got interested. A few friends started talking about cryptocurrency and I knew nothing about it. So I spent the best part of 2 months trying to find resources, videos, experts that could explain blockchain and cryptocurrency, and listening to entrepreneurs tell me about their business. And I found that even though we seemed to be speaking the same language, there was somehow a massive disconnect because I didn't have a clue what any of them were saying. The language of blockchain and cryptocurrency is completely mystical to anyone that doesn't know what's going on in the industry. And that's what I found. So I was working with early stage businesses and I said, what is it you're doing? And they're saying, well, we're creating a layer 2 protocol. And I was thinking, hang on, what's going on? That will be built on the Ethereum blockchain. And it meant nothing to me. I thought, well, what does any of this mean? They're creating dApps and there's all these acronyms and all this language that's used in this space by people. And it was mystical to me. And what I realized is that there's some big opportunities in blockchain to anyone that can simplify it, to anyone that can simplify what they do, that there's massive opportunities out there for them to like do incredible stuff and to change the world, quite frankly, because I'd be very interested if any of you've got any background in blockchain or cryptocurrency, because if there's any beginners like me at the beginning of the journey, it's just a minefield. And understanding what people do is not very easy to someone that has no background in the industry. But this is the same with any industry. So for all of you looking out for funding, you'll be in whether you're a designer, whether you're positioning a platform, whether you're in tech, medicine, every sector has a language which needs decrypting by anyone outside. Acronyms, terminology, things like this. And most of the pitches that I see, I don't understand because people make too many assumptions. And what I've realized from the funding world is that anyone that can explain their business simply to a 10-year-old will be far more likely to get funded than someone who's an expert in the field and probably so entrenched in their sector that they can't really see the wood for the trees as far as the language they use to position themselves is concerned. So I was noticing this huge gap in the market, that all of these great business ideas, these great entrepreneurs, and disconnect with funders. Now, here's a few facts for you if you're going to go down the funding route. And these are the things that people don't tell you. You'll usually get people that are consultants in the sector that will tell you how easy it is to get funding as long as you do it through them. It's a classic sales pitch, but it's not. Funding is a minefield. So for startup businesses, attracting angel investment or venture capitalist funding, the last stat that I saw, it was 0.68% of businesses get funded in early stages from angel investors or venture capitalists. And the reason is they don't like taking the risk. They don't like being the first person in. Finding an initial investor is really, really difficult. And most of the companies that I consult with, I found that I wasn't introducing them to funders because they weren't ready. But there are several ways that you can build your business proposition or do things that don't involve funding that can add to the valuation or the credibility of the venture. And this was the thing that we were finding, that some people, the plate stops spinning. When you go down the funding journey, it does at some stage become a full-time role. And one of the very common things that I see is that people are so stuck in the funding world or trying to get funded, they stop doing things for their business, and the plate stops spinning and the value proposition starts to go down. And it's really difficult to find the support system to help people along that road. So I've come up with an idea. What do I want to do? Well, at this stage in my life, I've seen a lot of businesses. I've connected with a huge funding network, and I've been working with a lot of people that have been looking for funding. And I am now looking to run a pilot to create an ecosystem for startup entrepreneurs and early stage businesses, to plug them into an ecosystem that will give them the training and give them access to funding opportunities. So that is what I will be doing moving forward. And part of that strategy, I'll be connecting. I'm already connected with a lot of accelerators and incubators who are looking for these unicorns, looking for these early stage businesses. All they need quite often is some help with their positioning and how to pitch their business. So we've seen this big gap in the market. We've seen this opportunity. And here's a bit of personal information. You know, I don't have any kids, so I've got no legacy to leave on. What I want to do is create a company that I can hand over to the people who are going to be using it at the end of it. So I've reached a stage where I've questioned my life purpose. What do I want to be saying at the end of my life? What do I want to hand over? What do I want to give back? And this is what I want to do, because I believe that at the stage we're in the planet, with all of the fear and all of the nonsense, and especially with global warming, that's going to massively impact probably my generation, but definitely yours, that we need all of the help and the resources now, aggregated support for businesses that can provide solutions to make the planet a better and a safer place. So my aim, my purpose is to give back and hopefully leave the planet in a slightly better place than I found it in. And more importantly, to provide resources and training to get you guys funded. Now, I don't know if any of you are on the funding journey. Maybe some of you are probably going to go for jobs to start things off, and that's a safe bet. You're going to need streams of income. You're going to need security. And for me, jobs were essential because it made me realize what I didn't want. And sometimes a lot of the motivation for wanting to go out on your own and do things on your own can only come when you've realized what the alternatives are out there. Now, some of you, jobs will be the way forward. It is stressful running a business. There's no question of it. But one thing that I found that is definite is that it's very hard work on your own. You know, building a team, connecting with the right people, knowing where to go, knowing who to ask, actually asking for the help from the people in your network. And that was a big one for me because I came from a nursing background. And the philosophy that I somehow, is a messed up philosophy that I adopted was, you know, I'm here to help everyone else. And that quite frequently came at ignoring my own well-being needs. And I think entrepreneurs can do that. It's almost like you're the CEO, you should know everything, you should be able to do everything. Well, in actual fact, it's completely the opposite. The best CEOs know that they don't know, and they empower their staff to do the bits of the business that they're not ready to do. So that's my little intro on the funding journey and how I ended up in this plane. I'd really like to find out from you guys now, you know, what are you up to and what do you need help with? Because your feedback will be really useful in me piecing together my blueprint for building the resources and the community to help you guys. Because I'd hate to see people with great ideas, and often geniuses are, I found geniuses, scientists and tech geniuses they're not able to explain to the general public what they do, and that there's a gap there. There's a need for people to have understandable pitch to get funded. And I've seen this time and time again. So I'm going to open things up for you folks. I know that I can normally ramble on indefinitely, but that's not my purpose for this session. So I want to hand it over to you. I want to find out who's here, and I want to find out any questions that you've got relating to that, or any stories you want to share. This is your session, folks, and I'm here to help you.
Amazing. So yeah, Adam, a quick question there would be, in terms of the communication and the accessibility in terms of the information that you're presenting, what strategies would you use in terms of, you know, communicating your idea or your company or your business model to others and make it really understandable?
That's a brilliant question, Ahmed. And, you know, it's surprising how many people miss the mark on this. Because traditionally it is put your business plan together, get your business plan, you know, when you've done the business plan, then get it out there. The reality is in the funding world that most funders don't have much time. So the big networks might be seeing 100 opportunities every day of people looking for the same sources of funding. So the single most important thing anyone can do is condense your business proposal into one page. You know, now just think, this is for any movie fans here, this is your trailer. So how many times you've seen, oh yeah, I watched the film, but all the best bits were in the trailer? Well, yes, that's why you watched the film. And that was a good trailer that got you to watch the film, because all of the good bits are in it, and it only took 30 seconds. It's the same principle with business funding. So many people make the mistake of not answering questions and thinking they're clever by answering questions that weren't even asked. If you're not succinct, if you don't know what questions to expect, and if you don't have good answers for them, your funding proposal has likely failed. So being succinct is the single biggest thing, Ahmed, and it's better to have less information and drip feed it and allow an interactive response with funders, because we used to sit on the questions and answers panel, and sometimes people would only have 2 or 3 minutes to answer questions. I've seen entrepreneurs spend the whole 3 minutes not answering the first question. And that's a roadkill of a pitch. They actually gave quite a good pitch, but the Q&A killed it, because they clearly weren't prepared, and they were clearly trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. So being honest, transparent, and prepared are the best things that you can do there.
Brilliant, brilliant. And a message from Tobias. So Tobias has joined us from Berlin today. And he said that he's in a restaurant presently with some loud music in the background, which is why he's using the chat to engage. So Tobias is graduated from the product design program in 2016. He runs his own company now, Mivalu. He has a website as well that you can check out. He's involved in blockchain, and he's also created an education program for crypto co-founders, and also now more recently for Tech Open Air Berlin as well. So that's a Tobias alumni and what's it called, a participant today, and he's in the audience. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Tobias. Great to have you here. Yusuf El Sabai is saying that he's here perhaps to thinking about improving his lifestyle. A question coming in from James Buhan. James is asking, how hard was it to set up a business, or is it to set up a business, especially during the pandemic?
Good question. It's very easy to set up a business, but then running it, it's like, it's the same thing. You know, how easy is it to buy a car? It's very easy to buy a car, but if you haven't done any training or you've never learned how to drive, then you've got yourself a useless vehicle outside. So it really depends. I mean, it's getting the right team is usually the main thing. And that was something that I failed to do miserably when I did it. I thought I could do it all on my own. And what happens is, if you spend a lot of time doing things that you don't want to do, then it depletes your energy and focus for the stuff that you're good at. So finding the right balance and the right team is a very good thing. It's a very, very good thing. So if you're setting up a business, make sure you know exactly what you want from it, what time that you've got to put in for it, and who you'll bring into the party, who's going to help you with it. Because if you're doing it on your own, it's going to be Not a very easy task, because there's so many things that you have to do and get your head around that it was very easy for me to spend a lot of time learning things I didn't want to learn, I had no interest in, that used to drain my energy. Certainly all the accounting side, balancing the books, studying all of that, submitting accounts. I mean, that makes my energy dip. That's the part of the business, that I used to struggle with. So I had to get an accountant on board, and I realized that was an absolute essential. So, how you position it, it's easy to set up a business, but what you do with it, that's the hard part. So I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant. And I guess following on from that, James is also asking, in terms of setting up, what's the first steps and the first person or people to approach?
Well, there's lots of free resources. I mean, I was very lucky. I went locally. Usually the government in this country, and it's very easy to criticize them at the moment. And I've had my share of Boris dancing and partying memes along this journey. And it's not necessarily to Boris's credit, because all of these initiatives were in place before Boris came in, so he can't even take credit for them. But in fairness to the UK government, their tax breaks and opportunities for UK businesses are very good. So there's big incentives for investors to invest here. We've got things like the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, which offers entrepreneurs a 50% tax write-off to invest in early stage businesses, which means that you've got a lot of funds that high net worth individuals throw money at and say, I don't care what you invest it in, just invest it, because it's a tax write-off. So that money is out there and it exists. It's really important to know that, folks. But not only that, there's organizations like Stanta and Wenta, local organizations that are funded by the government or have access to government money that's been given to certain providers to provide services to help entrepreneurs. So my first step when I came out of nursing, we had a local business agency called Stanta. And I just went there, I knew nothing, and they were fantastic. They told me what type of companies there were, how to set it up, and what I had to do. And not only that, but they gave me access to workshops so I could upskill in things like bookkeeping, accounting, all of the other things that you'll need to learn how to run your own business. Now, I still wouldn't say I was an expert at the field, but I do run a business one way or another. I mean, I had to do the drag through because I really didn't want to be the entrepreneur. I thought it would be easy. I can just do what I wanted to do as a nurse and as an alternative health practitioner, but I had no idea what's in store for me. So first things first, if you're going to set up a business, make sure you've got backup. And that means either cash in the bank or you're still a part-time job. I didn't do it that way. And it was massively stressful because you can't predict how long it's going to take you to generate income and to make the business work or give you the lifestyle that you want. And a lot of people, it ends up as a trap. So these are more important things. Get advice. Advice is out there. There's consultants out there. There's government supported agencies to help you, to make sure that you've considered the broader aspects of setting up your own business.
Amazing. And I guess on the flip side, Ramsey's asking her, what's a big not to do or things to look out for?
Well, I've just given you the big one, doing it on your own. I mean, you need to be hardcore if you're going to go down that route, or just stupid. I was more just stupid through ignorance rather than arrogant enough to, well, I guess I was. I mean, I just didn't have a clue. The one thing, if I could go back in time, I'd have got help. I would have got a team. I'd have got more people involved in the venture. And certainly I'd have realized the skill sets that I didn't have that were going to set me back. So they're the big things to consider. Who are you in it with and the team? And of course, you might pick the right team and you might fall out. And that's happened as well. So many businesses go wrong because good mates go in. Everyone's friends at the beginning. And then when the money starts to come in or the direction of the business starts to evolve, that's when the clashes of heads happen. So If you're going in, and make sure you've got yourself the right legal arrangements, the right partnership agreements, shareholders agreements, things like that. You know, you do need to consider all of these. So legal advice, business advice, and you know, just business growth advice as well. What's your strategy? How are you going to get people on board? What's the route to market? You know, what's your return on investment? There's so much that goes into it. You need to consider all of these factors.
Awesome. And Kai Stopford's asking, is it realistic to hope to get funding as a small design consultancy, perhaps, in the world we live in now?
It really depends. Everything's uniqueness and everything's people. I'll tell you where your biggest opportunity now is. Here's the thing that no one else is talking about in the funding world. People buy people. It's you that they'll buy. You know, one thing that investors are asking themselves is, are you investable? Now, what is an investable person? I'll tell you what's not investable. When I ask a question, you know, a straightforward question, like what's your turnover last year? If somebody's trying to not answer that question or go off on a tangent, that tells me they're probably going to bullshit me in other areas of my life as well. You know, transparency works. Also, you can turn a weakness into a strength in a business pitch by showing the investors that you know that you're weak in that area. Let's face it, if you don't have a strong financial background or anybody an expert in that field, and somebody says, you know, what is your financials? You know, how do you look to manage it? If you go down the rambling route, oh yes, our team, I'll just keep talking until they get it, you know, they'll switch off. But you can say something like, we know that that is not our strength. And that's part of the reason that we need the funding. We're looking to bring on somebody else who's got a financial background. We're coachable. You know, you want an investor's more looking like, will they take my advice? They might see your business and think, actually, if you made a couple of switches, this could be a really good idea. And part of the Q&A, they're working out, is this person coachable? Will they listen to my suggestions? Are they open to feedback with their business? Because you might not have a good business. You might have the foundation of a good business idea, but there's certain aspects of it that you're not pitching right or are fundamentally flawed. Now, it might only take a few tweaks to completely change that. And not only that, when it comes to business valuation, if you get the right investor on board, targeting somebody with a background in the area that you're going into, with their black book, if you can get someone in board early with access to their entire business ecosystem, that can massively impact the valuation of the business. So you need to start thinking about these things. And these are things that most people don't think about, because it's like, I've got a business idea, I want to get funded, show me investors. They don't care. Most people don't care the backgrounds of the investors. Have they got a background in buying businesses, selling them off, and then just taking the profits? You know, you've got to research your investors as well. It's a two-way street, because the problem that people don't talk about in the funding world is some people do get funded, and then a couple of years later, the investor's taken them in a completely different direction, and the equity's been diluted so much that they're no longer a controlling shareholder of the business. I've seen people have to exit their own business because they didn't think about any of this. So there's a lot to consider on this journey, folks.
Amazing. And I guess another response and perspective to James Buhan's question in terms of, you know, starting a business or a startup, you know, in a difficult period such as the pandemic, is a perspective coming through from Tobias again. So Tobias mentioned that he set up the company, Mivalu, in December 2020. And for them, the toughest part was and is to find and establish proper sales channels when you can't meet people in person very easily. So that's another perspective for you, James. Now, James Buhan's asking another question for yourself, Adam. How much would you say is needed to start up a business? You also spoke a little bit about, you know, having a bit of backup there as well.
Yeah, well, it really is, James. I mean, how long's a piece of string, and how big's your risk appetite? Because risk appetite is a sliding scale. And to some people, you know, being down to your last, you know, it's not until you get down to your last, say, let's £100 in the bank with absolutely nothing to draw on. That's a crisis for some people, but for others, you know, I'm down to my last 20,000 and I've still got the house, you know, that they've got all these assets and they've got all things, and they'll tell you that they're skint. So I don't know. I mean, everybody's different. I've heard people cry poverty to me and then jump in their Bentley. So, you know, different strokes for different folks there. I mean, some people have a very high threshold for stress. And I've seen people just buy a laptop and start a consultancy business for nothing. You know, you don't need a lot just to register the business and get things going. You know, you could easily do it on £1,000 if the consultancy was your business and you had no overheads and you were working from home. So, you know, do I want the office? And here's the piece of string equation of that. Do you want a fancy office? Because that's going to cost you. Do you have to commute in? Because that's going to cost you as well. Could you run it from the garage? And let's put this in perspective. Google, Amazon, Microsoft all started from a garage. So Facebook from a garage. You know, they massively cut their expenses in order to be able to sustain themselves through the times where there was no money. So different strokes and different folks. If you've got a very luxurious lifestyle, you're going to need more. You know, if you're used to shopping on a budget, living on a budget, not living the high life, making the sacrifices, then you're going to need less. So it really depends. The first thing you have to do is work out, how much would I spend anyway? What am I spending? What are my minimum overheads right now? Get those figures in front of you and then work it out. Because for some people, that figure is going to be quite low. And for a lot of people, that figure is going to be quite high. And if you're putting yourself under stress that you've only got if you've only got cash to support yourself without earning for 3 months, then you're definitely going to be in for a stressful ride. I would suggest that if you're setting up your own business, you work out your living costs and you work out how much they're going to cost over at least a 12-month period. And if you don't have that amount of money as backup, then you're in the high risk zone. That would be what I would suggest.
Awesome. Question coming in from Carlos Ariel is asking, in terms of resources and reading and literature, what's your favorite books for investing? So say you had to choose 3 books that you've that's perhaps been inspiring or have helped you. What would you recommend?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big question. For a start, Carlos, I've got a big confession here. I don't read a lot. I used to before the internet came. That's how old I am. When I did all my backpacking and traveling, I went through books like there were no tomorrow. But my interest then was personal development, spirituality, and well-being. So that was my main focus. All of the books that I ever read were around that sort of area. Investing, I'm late in the game, but certainly it really helped. I went to meet Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth. That's a very good book. It sort of puts it in perspective, the problems of a scale-up company, how it started. There was so much resonant in there for me about how a business starts up and what can go wrong when you hit when it starts to get popular, scaling up and things like that. So The E-Myth is definitely one. I'm not so sure it's about investing though. It's not an investing book. I'm not sure I've read any complete book on actual investing. I really haven't. I mean, I've certainly followed some YouTube channels lately with people that are giving investment advice. Of course, they have to say that this isn't investment advice because legally that's the way that it goes on YouTube. But there's some good guys out there in the blockchain crypto space that I've been looking into. But no, I am not the person to be asking that question, quite frankly, because I certainly don't have a broad array of investment advice. But I can say is setting up business and things that really helped me. I was lucky enough to see Stephen Covey when he was alive with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's well worth a read. Because it doesn't matter what or when you're investing, you know, investing is an emotional game, and keeping it in perspective and in check. Those 7 habits are really good. But again, investing is not my thing, so I probably shut up now. Shut up, Adam. That's enough. Stop it.
And another question coming in from Rowan Robinson. In your opinion, what's better, to seek funding from other investors or approach the bank with a business plan?
Definitely seek other people. The bank business plan route, you need to fill in a load of paperwork, jump through a lot of hoops, and there's not much money available in banks. Banks are only going to give you loans against assets at the moment. Most business funding opportunities, there is no asset apart from you. So from their point of view, if anything happened to you, that's it. The debt's a bad one. It's a write-off. There's no asset to pin it on. They make their money from mortgages and stealing your house if you can't pay. So they're covered. They know that their jobs are good, and jobs are good and for the banks. It's like we win either way, whether you pay this back or not. We're quids in. So banks have a very, very, very low risk appetite, and they wouldn't be involved in startup funding. In fact, I'd go as far to say don't even consider it. If you're going for startup business funding, banks are not a route I would recommend at all, and I think they'll be entirely unproductive.
Amazing. And then perhaps it's a nice point, Adam, to perhaps touch on maybe the different types of funding available for startups, and maybe like touching on stuff like crowdfunding, venture capital, angel investment, seed funding, etc. Maybe kind of as you mentioned when you were like dipping your toes into cryptocurrency, etc. Like these terminologies didn't mean much to you at the time. So like maybe just kind of defining what these are, and maybe saying what's available for those who are thinking about funding a startup.
That's a really good question. There are entrepreneurs that have a preference to get in early because they know that's their best opportunity to get in before the big boys. When the big boys get in, you've probably already missed the boat. So it really is a case of, what makes an investor invest. So here's a little fact that I usually reel off on most of my sort of funding chats. I may well have said it the last time, but it's so important I'm going to repeat it just in case I didn't. So it was interesting because I was connected to somebody that ran an angel investment network that was set up about 10 years ago. Very successful, one of the early pioneers of angel investing. And when he first set the company up, he just thought it was good because people wanted to make money, and that's what it was about. And they wanted to be safe. He wanted to protect both sides, wanted to make sure that everyone got a good deal with the contracts and putting them all together. And not only that, but his organization, like 92% of the businesses that they fund are still going, or they were when I last spoke with him a few months ago. So, it's a hugely successful format. But he said he was surprised because after a few years, he decided to send a survey out to their investors and ask them, why do you invest in businesses? Why? And he thought it was just to make money. But what he was interested to find is that making money was a distant third priority for angel investors. So here's where I find out whether I did say anything in the last one. Does anyone want to guess what the first two are? You can put stuff in the chat if you want, or you can unmute yourselves. But I like to throw this out. What do you think angel investors look for when they're searching for a business? What is their priority? Okay, can I repeat? All right, Carlos. I'm asking personal connection and mission. Yeah, touts. You've seen me before. Good call. That's pretty much what it is. The number one reason that that businesses or angel investors look for is they want to see, would I want to hang out with this person? Am I having fun? Is there a reason to get out of bed here? Because you've to put yourself into their position. Most people who are angel investors, they've lived their life, they've got their family, if that's what they're into, or they've made their money. So much so that now they've got some money to invest in other businesses. Now, they haven't got much, the odds are they've not got a long life left. They've lived, the best years of their life anyway. And now it's time to to give back a little bit. And that's the number 2 reason that angel investors invest. I've made it, I've done really well out of life. Now I want to give something back. That's the number 2 reason. The number 1 reason is, do I like this person? Reason to get out of bed. So if you understand that, it's about your ability to connect with an investor versus how good is my business. You know, the good person with good connection skills will get funding over the good business every time. Because if you come across as arrogant or trying to brush things over, or, you know, just rub people up the wrong way, or don't make an effort to connect with the investors, then you'll probably miss the boat, and you'll probably be left there thinking why, or wondering why. So let's also talk about the standard rejection in the business funding world. So many people come away elated because they're told this, but it's a standard rejection. It's like, your business isn't quite ready for us now, but come back later if you get a lead investor and we'll have another look at it. And people see that as a positive. It's not. That's the standard brush off. It's just, if it does turn out that they got it wrong, and that you are resourceful and you can go out and get early stage funding. Investors are lazy. They don't want to do the due diligence, but they know if another fund has already put money in, they assume that a certain amount of due diligence has been done, or they wouldn't have invested. So getting your lead investor is the single most difficult and important part of the funding equation. And your ability to connect with that investor is the leverage that most people don't realize. It's a relationship game. It's about connection. And not only that, if they like you, they might not be ready to fund with you, but if they like you, they might know someone else that might. So people that are clever when they're pitching their business, it's all about the connection. They're always engaged, and they'll always ask for feedback. This is really important. If someone's not interested, ask them for feedback as to why. Some people might not be honest with you, but most people will. They'll tell you what you can do to improve your pitch. Always be learning, always be learning, always take feedback from the people that you're pitching to, and tweak and evolve the pitch. If you go out to get funded, you don't get funded, but you get good feedback that will improve your pitch, then that's a win as well. And that's the entrepreneurial spirit, the thick skin that you're going to need to go out into the funding world and take it by the scruff of the neck, because it's not for the faint-hearted folks. You have to get used to rejection, a bit like Colonel Sanders and his 1,000 rejections from places to sell his recipe for KFC. And in the end, after so many rejections, he set up his own restaurant, and look what happened next. So, you know, how many rejections can you take? That's the question. You're going to have to get used to rejection, and you've got to put on your your resilient pants for that day, folks, because that is part and parcel of the landscape.
Amazing. And talk with us on that note, your request to go live, and feel free to unmute yourself.
Just do it.
Just do it in the Nike one. By the way, I recently read the Nike founder book, the Shoe Blog or something like that. It was super nice in the sense that it showed the struggle for the hardware, how the startup gets, let's say you sell 100 shoes, month you sell 200 shoes, and you need to make them. But you need to get that, back in the day, there was no startup funding. So it's very interesting what those guys did back in the day. But my question to you, Adam, this time is, what is your biggest challenge personally from well-being perspective is? And when you have those problems or new challenges, what is your structure to deal with them? And how is that connected to the business that you do right now? How does that impact your performance?
That's a really good question. Takes some processing. Well, I think the biggest challenge that I have really is myself. And that is the biggest challenge that anyone has. I mean, yes, I could say that having a family that have no entrepreneurial awareness at all, that was challenging originally because nobody gets it. You know, you tend to find, and I find this a lot in the world of entrepreneurs, is that usually it's the black sheep of the family that's not following the script. You know, if both of your parents are entrepreneurs, then it's far easier to set up a business because you're used to that. But I came from a background where two psychiatric nurse parents, and they were very fixed in their way of like, you've got to go to university, you've got to get a job, you've got to get a house, you know, and I just found myself resisting this lifestyle and seeing how utterly miserable they were through following that formula. So, yeah, I guess it's dealing with family issues, and that is probably from my well-being practice. They're the ones that cause the big upsets with people. So once you can navigate your own family, the rest gets easy.
Amazing. And a question coming in from Yusuf Al-Sabai, he's asking, what's the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur? And what's the best advice that you can give us from your experience?
Well, good question. The truth is, I don't know. I have an opinion, and I haven't really thought about it. But certainly one skill that bumps straight to mind, resilience. You need to be resilient. You know, you need a thicker skin. You need to be, if you're precious at all, then don't be an entrepreneur. It's not going to work. It's going to be hard work. So you need resilience. You need a calm head. They're parts of the same package, but, you know, to getting too emotional about your business, yeah, you need that calm head, that ability to be circumspect, to detach, step back, and operate cool under pressure. So cool under pressure, I would say, one, and resourceful. You know, that's probably the best thing. If you're resourceful, then things happen. You know, resourceful people, when things absolutely collapse around you, resourceful people will still be looking for solutions. And that goes in with the resilience part. You know, when there's been times where I've been absolutely crushed, when my whole world has fallen apart, when business ventures don't go there. I mean, that's when you find out who you are. And more importantly, that's when you find out who your friends are. Because all of your fair weather friends will vanish to the wayside when your world collapses. Personally, I think everybody needs their world to collapse. I don't quite trust people that haven't gone through that, oh my God, you know, that total crisis, because it usually forms the character that you need to get into the world of being an entrepreneur. You know, you've got to be ready for different unpredictability. You know, I think it's a Darwin quote. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, it's the ones who are most adaptable to change. And it is that ability to adapt that I think is like critical for business. I think that's 3.
Amazing. And then a question coming in from Anonymous. I'm not sure whether that's a name or an alias. However, it's asking, have you ever seen a business based in the automotive industry or car design get founded? So he's thinking about Italian automotive design, so like a company like Pininfarina or Bertoni, something like that. Have you ever seen any funding opportunities or within your experience, Adam?
Well, once I co-founded a company called Ace Funding, and we saw some quite high level stuff. And I did see an executive summary, funnily enough, for a hydrogen-based fuel car. But at the time, apparently the owner was lying low because they'd been getting, that this technology being available, it sort of threatened some big boys. And so they were lying below the radar. It's very interesting when you get into it and you see the stuff that's out there. So I've seen a proposal, but I haven't been through the journey of the funding journey of that, because that was just one guy that we met, and he wasn't quite looking for funding. He was looking to stay under the radar when we met him. So that was interesting times. But yes, it sounds interesting, but it sounds also expensive, and it also sounds like you'll need a really good pitch to consider getting that funded.
Amazing. And then I guess one of the key things, right, in terms of communicating and pitching, what kind of structure or approach have you seen that's really successful in terms of pitching a business venture?
Well, really being succinct and confident. Being pitch ready is very different to being investment ready. I guess if you've watched a few episodes of Dragon's Den, there's nothing. When I first came into funding, everything I knew was from watching Dragon's Den. All I was finding when I was putting entrepreneurs in front of investors, they were asking exactly the same questions that come regularly on Dragon's Den. What are investors interested in? They're not so much interested in your theory. You need to get that straight, the creative side. What they're interested in is the commercials. And they come down to a thing called investor highlights, which is anything to do with business traction. So what is business traction? What are investor highlights? So is it registered for seed enterprise investment scheme? Has it had any other money raised? Have you invested any of your own money in it? I mean, that's a big one. Have you got skin in the game? In fact, this is really important and deserves a little section on its own. An investor wants to know that if they invest money in your business and it doesn't work, that it's going to hurt you. They want to know that you're going to be motivated to go the extra mile. Now, if it's all their money and your idea, well, that hurt money doesn't exist, and that's a higher risk to an investor. Because would you perform as well spending someone else's money as you would your own money? And as an investor, that's what I want to know. Do you have skin in the game? That's really, really important. And that's you want to build these investor highlights. So any partnerships that you've got in place, any agreements, they want to know, okay, supposing you've got a fantastic product, how are you getting it out there? Where's your distribution network? And if you haven't demonstrated that you've thought about this, or you've gone, there's nothing to stop you, even before your product's created, to go to potential distribution networks and start talking about it. I've got a product that does X, Y, and Z. If it does what I say it can do, would you be interested in distributing it? So you can get things like pre-agreements from distributors saying, yeah, if your product does what it says, we'll agree to distribute it. That hikes up the valuation. And it shows investors that you've thought about this. You've thought about the whole journey. Because making a good pitch about a good product, that's only a very small fraction of the battle. Entrepreneurs want to know that it makes commercial sense. Is there a need for it? So here's the most important thing in funding. And here's where some people get it so wrong. They talk about these wonderful innovations in certain sectors, but they don't describe the problem they solve or the scale of the problem. So first sell the problem and then sell the solution. Because if people don't know what problem you're solving, you're wasting your breath on the pitch. It might sound great, but do we know it? Do I know the industry? So forming your pitch for someone who does not know the industry, your average 10-year-old, it's actually a lot more helpful pitching to kids because they've got no idea of anything. So you have to simplify it. So that's a good exercise for anyone. Simplification and business traction. They're the two things that investors are looking for. Very simple explanation of what it is and what skin in the game, what measures have you taken to make sure that this makes commercial sense.
Amazing. And I guess another question that's along the same lines, TalkVidas is asking, what's best practice in terms of testing the idea before the pitch?
Go to a pitch workshop. And funnily enough, I run pitch workshops. So I'd say stay on my radar and come along because, the reason I put these on is because I've seen so many good people absolutely crash and burn because they overtalk their pitch. And I'm the same. If it's my business, I'm not the person to pitch it. It's my baby. It's my business, It's far more difficult to pitch your own business than it is to pitch someone else's. So what the pitch workshop does, it gets everybody in the room. It gives you all an opportunity in a safe environment to practice your pitch and to get live feedback from everyone around, would you invest in that? And this is where you have to be honest with each other. Because if you come along thinking, I'll tell everyone they're great, and then hopefully they'll tell I'm great, well, that's not really going to help you when you get in front of funders. You know, getting honest feedback, finding out what you can improve, and getting a 360 degree on it is essential. And even if not at a pitch workshop, if you know anyone in the funding world, or even your friends and family, pitch it to them. Say, what do you think? Just pitch it to anyone that will listen. This was a thing that David Copperfield used to do before he went on stage. I know that's not pitching for funding, but you know what a showman he was. Apparently, if there was no one else, he'd ask the cleaners. He'd ask anyone to listen to it because he believed that everyone had valuable feedback to give him. So this question can be answered, just be receptive to feedback. Now, feedback isn't right or wrong, it's feedback. You might not agree with it, but always thank people for giving it to you. Because if you get defensive over feedback, guess what happens? People stop giving you feedback, think, oh, they meant good feedback. They don't want to hear anything that could improve their pitch. When in actual fact, it's the stuff that could improve your pitch that's the best feedback you can get. And once you adopt that mindset, your pitch journey will change.
Hey, amazing. Amazing. I think that brings us really nicely towards the end as well. That's superb advice to finish and conclude on. So Adam, it's fantastic to have you this evening. Like, thanks a lot for taking out your time, joining us tonight for the talk, an overview of your journey, your experience, your learnings, your advice, alongside this brilliant interactive and fantastic Q&A that we had at the end as well. And all of the participants, details of the talk were sent to your emails ahead of the talk, including links to Adam's website and LinkedIn as well. So definitely feel free to browse and connect with Adam. Like Adam mentioned, he runs pitch workshops. And Adam's always available, for additional dialogue and conversations with you guys. So feel free to connect with Adam.
That's very well said. Thanks, Ahmed.
Oh, you're welcome. And to all of the participants and attendees and alumni who've joined tonight, staff, students, guests, we really look forward to seeing you all again next week as well. So keep an eye on your emails for the details of the next speaker and links to the next talk as well. And until next week, guys, stay well, stay safe, and thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ahmed, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Good to meet you all.